never been in the church before? Great. So it's a double pleasure for you to be able to see inside one of Glasgow's architectural gems. And I'd like to take this opportunity right at the outset to thank the Glasgow City Free Church for allowing us to host this event this evening. We thought that it was such an amazing space, and it was going to be an architectural treat, not only to hear Winy talk, but also to get into the space. So thanks a lot to the church for allowing us to host this. It is the perfect setting, as I say, to talk about Glasgow, architecture and urbanism right here in the heart of the city. And if you haven't already done so on the way in, you'll remember when you clicked on your Eventbrite invitation that we requested that you gave a donation in lieu of an entry charge, and that donation will go towards the upkeep of this amazing building. So it would be greatly appreciated if you haven't already done so, if at the end of the night you could make a donation. That would be greatly appreciated by all. And by all means, take a copy of the brief history of the architecture of the building in return for that. I was asked the other day about how the MVRDV and Austin-Smith Lord collaboration came about, and it was MVRDV who contacted us, I think it was back in 2009, when we were considering looking at what's now known as the Reed Building up at Glasgow School of Art. Clearly we didn't win that particular competition, but it fostered a collaborative working relationship over the last number of years. And we were therefore delighted as a team to be selected by Glasgow City Council in the middle of 2016 to undertake the next 4 district regeneration frameworks. And they are Broomielaw, Blythswood, St Enoch and Central. And this follows on from the first district, which was at Sauchiehall and Garnet Hill, which was prepared by Jan Gale. All of that work is working towards the Glasgow City Council's city centre strategy. And to tackle such a complex project, we've assembled a multidisciplinary team fusing local specialist knowledge with international expertise. So our team comprises, and is, in terms of lead designers, with MVRDV and Austin-Smith Lord providing that local design experience. We've got Space Syntax providing spatial economics, Douglas Wheeler Associates providing socio-economic consultancy, Ryden advising us on property, our friends at Wave Particle providing community animation and public art advice, Urban Tide on smart cities, ARIP on all aspects of engineering, Gardner and Theobald on cost advice, and Jerry Grams is acting as a critical friend to our team. So such a complex project requires such a wide and diverse team, and we've very much enjoyed collaborating as a team on the project thus far. It's been an immense privilege to work with MVRDV over the last 5 or 6 months, and it's a massive responsibility for us all to take forward this project for Glasgow City Centre. It's a pivotal time for the city, and there are countless interesting opportunities and indeed many challenges emerging as we discuss the project. We're developing our ideas in constant engagement with local communities, businesses, stakeholders, landowners, local and national agencies, and various council departments. And so tonight, in amongst other things, you'll get a sense of how things are shaping up, a snapshot of progress in terms of how the first of the 4 districts in Broomielaw is coming together. I should also let you know that we're just about to commence the community engagement on the St Enoch district. So if you're out and about in that part of town, look out for the team. They'll be commencing their work. And we're also on the cusp of hopefully having a unit in St Enoch where you can pop in and share your ideas about your city centre. So feel free to interact with the project. We've got a website, www.yourcitycentre.com, and there's the various social media channels to share your ideas if you can't indeed participate in some of the workshops and events coming up. St Vincent Street Church is undoubtedly one of Glasgow, indeed the UK's architectural gems, and Alexander Greek Thomson's masterpiece. April 2017 will be the 200th anniversary of Greek Thomson's birth, so look out for celebratory events here, no doubt through other parts of the city, and I believe there's also a forthcoming BBC documentary. Before I introduce Winy, I'd like to help to set the scene by inviting my colleague David Miller, who's Head of Conservation Architecture at Austin-Smith Lord, to give a short appreciation of Greek Thomson and outline the significance of this building in his life work. David.
Thank you, Graham. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Graham has asked me to say a few words about the church. and a little story that's behind it. This church was designed by Alexander Greek Thomson and dates from 1857. Thomson was one of only, I would say, a very few architects who would be said to be of international stature. His unique architectural style, blending Greek and Egyptian motifs and ornament, as you can see around you, was almost entirely confined to Glasgow at that time, where his designs were truly modern, jaw-droppingly bold, and yet blended all of those ancient architectural forms with new materials such as cast iron and plate glass. The rainwater comes down these columns. This is still some of the original glass bonded into the masonry above us. Thomson was born in Balfron, not far from Glasgow, as Graham said, April 1817. He was the 17th child of a certain John Thomson. Amazing. He was educated at home, no bad thing, I was the same. Tutored, we believe, by a minister, it was my mum, so not the same. But it was his early apprenticeship to the architect Robert Foote that allowed him access to a vast library and a collection of classical casts. And I think from this resource, which was on tap, he clearly absorbed and learned a great deal, which influenced his early architectural career and direction. His work encompasses, as you probably know, villas, homewood, tenements, warehouses, but he only did 3 churches in Glasgow. And the sad story is that Caledonian Road, United Presbyterian Church from 1855, burned down in the mid-1960s. St Vincent Street followed 1857 to 59, and Queen's Park Church has also gone, demolished. So only this church and this space you're in with this interior survives intact and is in use, taken over by the Free Church in the 1970s. So I would say soak it in, enjoy it, but why is it here on this steep hill? And that's always been a question in my mind. Well, in 1856, his brother George, who was a member of the Gordon Street UP Church, which is down on the site close to Central Station, that due to the great increase in value of land at that time, the Caledonian Church down there decided to sell the site, and the congregation elected to move here, seek out this site, and purchase it. Then Alexander and George bought the George Street site, demolished and built a showpiece warehouse down there, now the Grosvenor building opposite the station. George then seems to have been successful in persuading the St Vincent Street congregation to appoint himself and George as the architects for this building. Certainly an entrepreneurial fellow, wouldn't you say? And is rather something that other architects should consider in your future. But he was also deeply interested in art, the work of John Martin in particular, an English romantic painter who was celebrated for vast melodramatic paintings of religious events with fantastic buildings in them, vast cubic mass, a scale huge, colonnades of unknown classical order, yet all in an exciting and exotic way. And if you look at these paintings, you'll actually see much of the detailing you see on the buildings. He was clearly gifted and a very intelligent architect, interested in antiquity and Greek and Egyptian architecture, some of the motifs you see here. He was obviously also an entrepreneur with his brother. So I would say enjoy this unique space, enjoy the glory of the past, but embrace it with innovation and modernism. And let's look forward to what I hope is an inspiring evening lecture by our guest tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And so now to the main event. It's a great honour to welcome Winy Maas back to Glasgow. MVRDV were founded in 1993 by Winy Maas, Jacob van Ries and Nathalie de Vries in Rotterdam. MVRDV are regularly cited as one of the leading architecture and design practices in the world today, with numerous and countless international awards and accolades. The practice engages globally and provides solutions to contemporary architectural and urban design issues. It's a highly collaborative, research-based design method that they employ, working with clients, stakeholders and experts from a wide range of fields, and indeed that's what we found to be the process that we've encountered in Glasgow. The results are exemplary, often outspoken, which enable cities and landscapes to develop towards a better future. Winy Maas is an architect, urban planner and landscape architect. As one of the co-founders and co-founding directors, Winy is responsible for projects throughout the world. And operating from their principal studio in Rotterdam, Winy is world-renowned for projects such as the groundbreaking Expo 2000, the vision for Greater Paris, Grand Paris Plus Petit, and the Marktaal in Rotterdam that I'm sure you're all familiar with. He's a professor and director of the Why Factory, a research institute for the future city that he founded in 2008 at the TU in Delft. He's currently a visiting professor at the GSAPP Columbia in New York and the IIT in Chicago. And he has been visiting professor at the University of Hong Kong, the Catholic University of Louvain, the ETH in Zurich, the Berlage Institute, MIT, Ohio State, and Yale University. Quite a prestigious list. In addition, he designs stage sets, objects, and has been the curator of many exhibitions. He gives lectures internationally and regularly takes part in design juries for international design competitions. Winy joined the Economic Development Board of Rotterdam in 2013. He was appointed urban supervisor for the city of Almere in 2012, and he's been supervising the Bjørvika urban development in Oslo since 2003. Winy's work, both with MVRDV and the Why Factory, has been widely published in many research documents. Winy received the Order of the Dutch Lion from the Netherlands government and has been made a Chevalier of the Légion d'Honneur by the French government for his contributions to the fields of architecture and urbanism. It's therefore a great pleasure to welcome Winy Maas to the altar to give this evening's presentation and to outline the Glasgow project within the wider context of MVRDV's work and the challenges that cities face in the 21st century. Winy Maas.
Well, thank you very much for this introductions. I do hope that that the lights can go down. I think you're taken care of. And very nice also to be back. Yeah, always in a wonderful space. I remember first time in the lighthouse a long time ago, and really a super space at that moment, and recognized all over Europe. And later, the last time I had a lecture was somewhere in a kind of new building, and I still remember that momentum that I went into the audience, and then were like 1,500 people or something like that in that room, and mainly girls, and very small. And they were all like 14 years. So that's really, you have the youngest audience in the planet. But we found out that they had put me on the wrong stage. So there were two. It was, and so I went out again, met Christina Aguilera, and had a good talk with her before I could go into the audience. And yes, there were a lot of people in blue suits. So that was that was my last part. I'm happy to be back and also to join your team on this exercise. No, it should not be an exercise. And to face and to discuss with you what is potential. And I see, of course, that there's enthusiasm and there's skepticism in your city, enormously. It seems that you always combine that in that way. The key issue is, of course, to get rid of the skepticism and to lose it a little bit before it leads to lethargy. And I do hope somehow in these days and in these discussions with more people that could be more of your cup of tea in the future. Because there's a lot to do. The title of the lecture today is indeed Your City, as already has been announced in a way, like what is that? It's a very beautiful word, because on one hand, and that shows exactly that combination of enthusiasm and skepticism. It's your city, it's our city, and how to go, say, from the singular to the collective is what we are wondering. And I think it's a good moment in time to do that. How to span the gap between bottom-up and top-down. And to go, and I'll take you today to that scales, from XS to XL. That's what we have to face with each other. How can we span that gap? And it counts for everybody here in this audience. And even more than ever before, with a growing population in the planet, we feel much smaller than ever before, with powers that are discussing, say, cosmopolitanism or the globalism at this moment, at this very moment of this week, we are facing that we are too small or too big in that way. So of course, what is XS to XL? It can be also notated as XL to XS in that way. And I would like to start with S. Yeah, because small is good in that way. And I think the next generation is starting from that point, more of that, because you cannot avoid it anymore. So we all have to start small. And this is what this week was on the table in the Y Factory, in our research domain, where we are dealing with the translation from ego to we go. We all want to be in a society that we can speak out more, that we are more educated, and we are dreaming of a middle class everywhere on the planet. That is, of course, our, say, social democratic dream, I hope, or European dream. That in that way, that egos are okay, but how can we celebrate in the future togetherness again, the we go? When does ego turns into we go? That's what this city book is about. And it is a small exercise. And to help, because I guess there are architects in the audience, to start from there, and then we see it, take it to the planners at that moment, because yes, there is a gap between architecture and planning. We should go beyond that also in this kind of your world exercise or your city exercise. So Ego City is started with 17 architects in that way. And they're very much egos, because in university, architects are trained as egos, because you have to be unique, special, and you have to compete with other kind of monsters that are surrounding you in order to survive. So is that a good way of training people? Anyway, these egos selected 17 clients. These clients were like all over the planet, and they analyzed these potential clients in that way on their desires. So these are the characters. Just by Facebook and by other means, you can pull that out, you can analyze them, and start to see what these characters are. So one of the students found out this beautifully lazy man somewhere in Ohio that has voted for Trump, that is in a way wanted to, and they analyzed a little bit what his character is, and you can do that in different means. Architects have to do that. We have to work with developers, with maklers, in order to understand our clients. So this is from inside out, like a method to see that. And what he does during his day, and what he wants to do, and what there is desire chart. And he found out that in the end, his house, his perfect house, would look something like this. A small den to sleep, and then a place where he always could play bowling. And that's... I think it's a cool house, no? It's very, very specific to have. He's lazy, not always, is what this project says. But did you ever make a house? One of the architects, no, but we all dream about that. We want to go beyond the standard, no? And then the housing corporations are here. So they formulate, also in the past, too much, say, standardization. And for fair reasons, maybe. There are developers here that want to standardize because they want to facilitate uncertainty in that way. And yeah, but why can't we do that? Can't we give this man this house? And if we go further with that, with this fantastic immaterial boy who wants to have a kind of space, like you were almost in Switzerland, in that way to imagine, or this loud desire from this metal guy, or this beautiful protester that had another kind of, say, platforms that we could think about it, or the mediative director, which has another kind of space to invite his clients in this house and to combine it with work. So there, anyone that has different kind of, say, desires to make a beautiful house in that way, or like this bibliomaniac. Of course, I want to make a shell, or that where all my books are there, which you can easily access in a kind of no-go moment. Is what this one is dreaming about, etc. So we can have this enormous amount of desires that are translated through this Facebook, say, communication with these different people of it. So, dream houses, okay. We all want to do that. That's clear as architects. But it's also a beauty because this means that there are 17 characters, not only in human existence, but also in spatial configuration. That's what we should facilitate. But what's next then in that way? Because if these people live apart, then you get to your suburbs. Huh? Exactly, that's the point what we're going to talk later about also with the project of the Your City issue. Because somehow, if you have too much space, you don't talk. In that way, you stay away. So we imagined what would happen at a certain moment if we put this kind of, say, people under a certain kind of density as such. When that happens, then I have to talk with you. Because, yeah, your neighbor has some kind of other opinion in that way. I have become like the therapist of a society, is what basically this is happening. So what was next in that way is that we started to invent and to develop, now in this case, and I'll come back to that later, it was in Chicago, we're going to make a house out of this, is to have how to make a game between, how to mitigate. So we can facilitate. You can put in something. So there are different ways of doing that. So there are different games that can help you with this 17 owners to say, I want my house, but I have to defend it. How much give I back to the others? What are the issues? What's my priority in that way? And we have to learn each other to do that. So we did that. We made these games. We played it, of course. And one very beautiful one is the blind game, that you don't know what you're heading for. Why? Because that makes it also probably very intriguing and actually more free in the end to mitigate with your own desires in that way. That came out of this game that's constructed like that. Here you see it, how it's working in our software, and how, say, in a sequence of time, let's set an hour, you play this game and you have it and then this mitigates up to you have a very beautiful, say, solution. Okay. The bowling alley is a little bit shorter, maybe, or has a curve. So that's a new, but that is what can happen. Of course, there's nothing happening with it, because it pulls at the same moment many more constraints with it. Structure, waste, how to deal with it. Stairs, let's talk about it. So here's the software behind the stairs that are pulled with it, with that, say, game to get all this, say, this puzzle of desires together. And that leads to ultimately to this kind of optimizer. This is maybe a beautiful way of showing this perfect ensemble of people, where this pattern is then part of our environment, and where we start to make a kind of building where, say, individuals are as important as the collectivity in a way. Because if I am in this house over there, which is a beautiful section in that way, then I'm intrigued by this guy next door, this orange house. What is he intruding in my house? I wouldn't mind to visit him. And that's exactly the moment that ego goes to we go in that way. And that I would like to see what he or she is doing in this puzzle that we could then arise, and where the infrastructure is simply pulled with it from the bottom to the top and leads to this kind of things. That is what we now will develop. But more, not a kind of model that I could see from XS to XL somehow being applied. How to deal with our generation on this, all these egoists in that way, and to get them into a kind of we-go model is what this project somehow is expressing. And I'm happy at this moment that we can now build one with 7 families in Chicago for the Biennale with wood, because otherwise it's too complicated, but to get that already tested as such. Where is the developer here in the audience? Where is the housing corporation that don't want to, that element, that cannot do that? So skepticism on one hand, maybe, can we go over that and lean into say, optimism or into joy? This is an introduction, but of course it's interesting to go to a bigger scale on this matter. And that is opening up with this enterprise. Here it is. I hope this goes fast in the software here. No, not yet. And I jump immediately to XXL. Let's see, I'm sitting in a plane this morning, and like with you, I'm reading this kind of stuff. I see a French situation where suddenly right and left are disappearing, and let's say new parties are coming up to explain what they wanted to do. It's about progress and liberalism in that way, and they cannot find their situation. And that is, I think, coincidentally also explained by this explosion on the left side, but that is combined in this newspaper. And I'm like thinking, what can we do in this new world? How can they both create a kind of we go out of their different egos in that way? And of course, in the same newspaper, there are other egos that are somehow working with us these days. And I doubt about his, say, climate agenda. Obviously, I can only talk from a professional point of view, obviously. And I doubt about his real estate portfolio. But it's like an element how to deal with that. And at the same moment, I see then that there are people that are escaping. multinationals that are troubled and that are reconsidering investments in the US and considering it maybe in Europe in a way, as you can see in the Economist this week. So, or say this kind of rich people that make their own shelter somewhere in Hawaii or in Norway at that moment. So what is happening with this planet where we are kind of splintered almost to these forces? And then I bring you to one scale lower, to Europe. You are also Europe. I heard. So there's and there is a kind of, and that relates to that immediately. It puts, say, how are we going to perform in that world, and how can the spatial organization of Europe somehow, say, being dealt with? And I come back to that, because your city is part on this, is definitely doing something, and I'm trying to analyze with you what that could be. Also, at the same moment, there are people that say Europe is in a kind of chaos. And we suffer not only from the US, but also from East Asia. We are in between. And there are people that say, okay, Britain out, Albania in. So we have a kind of changing attitude towards that. But it's let us talk about what Europe could do. And when I look to, for instance, such a kind of map, and I look more closely to what Europe is, then I find it a fascinating continent. I declare my love to it, and I want to be there. I want to support it. I want to bring it. That's why we are somehow here. Also, you have a certain love for Europe. You have a love for say, Glasgow in a wider context. And why is it so? Could it be lovely? Because we are cute, and we have the highest amount of cute towns in the planet, very close to each other. Also Glasgow, with excuses, you're not the same size as Sao Paulo, but that is somehow a quality. And at the very moment, we have the highest amount of storytelling, say heritage, in that way. Like this one, I would doubt about the columns over there, but that's for later discussion during the drinks. But there is an enormous belief and also love in kind of, in time as such. And yeah, and if I ask a mayor what he loves, then they love this kind of images. We all want to have a castle, a church, and some cute houses. All the mayors want to walk in their cities these days, in Europe, we are talking. They all love some kind of public transport, preferably a metro line, and there's a huge fashion in tram lines in Europe. We all want to have tram lines. Some people still believe in buses in that way, and if you don't have enough money, it's basically what is happening, and then we bike around. This is a very beautiful formula in that way, and it has also gives such a kind of effect on it. This is a map of Amsterdam, where in green you see the real estate prices, and the highest one, and in red the lowest one. So obviously, and that's a very strange element in Glasgow, where that's not somehow the case somehow, is that most of these historical centers have an insane value and are for sale. I mean, massively these days. It's bought by Asian, say, developers, by American investors, even more these days. So there is, and that raise our prices enormously. What can we do with that? And at the same moment, we have another Europe, say the red Europe in that way, that looks like this. And you know it also, because everywhere it looks like this endless sprawl of shit that we also produce in the same moment. Excuse me, but I do think that we have to work on that intensely. And that is what your city center is also about. You can invest over there, but you have to do it in the very heart. Otherwise it becomes something like this in a way. The nice thing is to see what of course, in the planet is happening. So if you see the US, which has traditionally such a kind of urbanism, or somehow a kind of bundle of towers, and then if you go out of the towers, you get this kind of lanes that always end in a cul-de-sac with your house. I mean, it's a nightmare urbanism, where I hate it personally, and between us, of course, that we can talk about this today. And as an invention, recently, I mean, he might be here. This is not, say, Italy, but this is also not, say, France, but this is simply pieces of the new urbanism that comes into state. If I talk about Asia, which is dominated by infrastructure, and then a heap of production of buildings that surround it, if there's infrastructure. So that at the moment now is compensated by something, Japan, an example, Quite cute. Or here, this is not Copenhagen, but Shanghai in that way. Or here, a piece in Nanjing, how that is coming across. Somehow we all say that urbanism is cool in Europe. So we want Europe in that way. So, and that, I love this image, of course, that somehow we still want to advocate with that. It says something about the values, about urbanism. Urbanism is not stupid. It is like trying to say what is good or bad and to talk about it and to get it, to improve it, of course. And that is what I can see in this map of Europe. That doesn't say that we have to talk about these 500 cities. That maybe you should not look like Amsterdam, or you should not look like Copenhagen in that way. You can learn from each other. But I would plead for a kind of diversity that is enormous in a way. Why? Because this diversity helps us to specialize, to have certain economies over there and other places, to go around in that way. So I become, as a citizen, in this case from Rotterdam, I become dependent on you, because I have to go to you. I think that's cool, this interdependency. I think Saskia Sasse mentioned that once in some of her books, that this kind of interdependency leads to more stability, leads to more loving factor. There, hey, was it we go? Ego becomes we go at that moment. And that is this scale jump from XS to XL that I would like to propose in order to tackle this operation of your city or our city that you are going to work. But let's go one step deeper in XL. Of course, nice, and I'm not a world politician. I hopefully can, from our position, criticize a little bit what the behaviorism of different politicians. But I can help to formulate a little bit. So on the L scale, I would like to bring you to what we did in Switzerland. We're still working on it. Switzerland is also part of Europe somehow, huh? And you're discussing similar models in that way. So it's intriguing how to make, and I remember this book still, how we make this Stadtland Schweiz, Urbanscape Switzerland. And of course that has some different questions that accompanied that study from the think tank of Switzerland about their future. Where is your think tank of Scotland? Where do you, and you have one of the nicest prime ministers in the planet. You go to her, get her, and let's talk about each other. And I tried to do that in St. Andrews maybe a year ago, but to make that more operable. But this is an example in that way. So in this book, we wonder, of course, where is Switzerland? Well, it's there on the map. What is Switzerland? We made many pictures of how Switzerland looks like. It looks like this. This is not Switzerland, you think, but it is. It is an intense, densified situation in Switzerland, denser than the Netherlands in that way. Yeah, they have some mountains that you cannot inhabit, so that kills more or less 60% of the ground. But the rest has that intensity, and it leads also to another kind of, situation. Of course, we discussed what Switzerland could or can become. And there are many, specializations, in this case of this cute country in the very heart of Europe. It has one of the best, forest places, to be honest. Why? Different climates come together, different heights come together. The variety of the forest is actually quite good. We need that forests on the Alps to keep the snow somehow there, or the water over there before it goes away through our rivers to anyway. So that was one of the projects, to imagine how we could add more forestry in the future in the whole Swiss, situation, and that it could be combined with, as I said before, with the effect that, like in the Andes, that the water system of the Alps should also be taken more serious in that way. Keep it for a while, store it, dosate your evaporation is what it wants to be. So this kind of lake project, the rivers to turn it into lakes, is one of the advices that came out of this study and would transform then, this Berner Oberland into such a kind of landscapes, tile-wise, partially. Around Bern, these projects are currently now happening in that way. Another element is that here in this is the road system of the center part of Europe, and yeah, you can see that the Swiss have a key role in that way. So this study investigates how to transform that cities in some kind of highways and discuss. I know it's a bit brutal suggestion, but why not? We are together, so in a church, so we can think about that. Why not skipping some? 3 tunnels are needed in the nearby future to be enlarged for this access in that way. So can we do for a minute, compare the costs of say, a tunnel and a bridge, and that would lead to this kind of, say, Alpenhochstraße, the high streets on 1,500 meters. That would be wonderful. Is that doable as such? And then I would see the Alps under me, and I would pass by Switzerland on a higher level as such. It was this kind of suggestion is doing, and here you see the studies where that could be. Same also for all the traffic, all the cargo, how to do that and how to analyze that, and leads to a kind of crossing point. Super Alten is it called, Alten, and that is a suggestion also to turn that into a good, say, distribution place that looks like that. And so I continue. Here another way of dealing with, say, the potential of such a kind of place somewhere on the planet. In summer, I mean, the solar aspect of Switzerland is better than parts of Italy in that way, because of the height. Why not using that? So here you can see how this, both the solar and wind aspect could lead to wind farms in the Oberland, but actually to beautiful, say, clad mountains with solar cells that would, like Bruno Taut, have the feeling that somewhere there are these kind of glass palaces on the mountains to be done, clad with this kind of solar apparatuses. And that coincides, of course, with the moment that our snow is a little bit evaporating. You have been skiing, some of you. Well, you didn't, because there was nothing. And there was only maybe a little bit in the higher places. And so in Zermatt. And so that what this shows what are the places that in a while gets less snow and could be cladded with that. And that means, so one, we can store these solar elements in the Alps, and secondly, we can move the ski places higher up. Like here, this is Matterstadt, next to the Matterhorn, to imagine at plus 4,000 meters, a good and cool city, literally, which could become the crown of Europe. And last but not least, Switzerland is also a city as such. And now it looks like this, but due to the processes, the immigration, yes, also Switzerland is growing, and in the future it will look like that. So we wonder the question, do you want to have that every village becomes a super village, every Q town becomes a super town? Or is this the moment to concentrate it, for instance, in this case, around Zurich? In the Zürichsee, if you do that and you get this smile, and if you go over Europe, then suddenly Switzerland is cute and transforms this into this kind of beautiful city where a lake turns into a kind of, say, event. It helped for the discussion. I have no clue if you do that. If, say, your enthusiasm versus skepticism allows for that momentum. It helps, because what happened out of this? Some elements. So yes, the solar modules are under production. So a lot of the mountains are clad now. Combine it with these avalanche technologies to have that then to have it done. Super cool project in that way. Yes, at 4,000 meters, the first hotel is coming up. Euler from Zermatt brings his next one to the Matterstadt, to higher up, to do it. Zurich is incredibly intensifying with all this kind of different, say, quarters over there. And now, with a kind of beautiful bridge in China, recently the highest one on the world, Swiss engineers suddenly believe that it might be possible to have in one, say, tal, in one valley, to have that possible. So yes, fantasies can lead to maybe directions, is what I would like to plead for. And I bring it further, because indeed, as you said, what happens then on the mezzo scale? Say, a bigger city, say, 12 million people, something like that. That's Greater Paris is about that. And we know Greater Paris because it's cute, but it has some problems in that way. And that has to deal with this A and B Europe in that way. And that has to deal with politics in that way, and how to deal with that. So I think, yes, we have to work with politicians together to work on a sort of situation that's more improved. And then to deal with this kind of controversy between this beauty and this beast that is surrounding Paris. Greater Paris is pretty horrible. There are a lot of good things in our culture and in most pieces of the culture, and somehow we try to find a combination. We share, don't we? Like the ambitions on climate change. I think that's an easy part, no? Well, still to go. And that is a base to analyze, say, the programs of our city. But I'm aware that we still have to be very ambitious. If Kyoto or Maastricht or Paris is a little bit about doing less, that's not the situation. Doing less is not the case. We have to be more ambitious and more responsible to get even that lessness in the end there. And that is in itself an interesting element. So the first thing we started to do was to talk about this less or more situation. And by giving a calculator basically to the president. And it's not a very poetic gift, I'm aware, for his birthday, but it helped a little bit to understand how good are you? How good is Glasgow? We come back to that later, don't worry. So we talk about, say, the performances not only of Paris, but of the Greater Paris area. And that was nice to see that the density in the Greater Paris is very low. Los Angeles, the tourism is reasonably because of Euro Disney and Versailles in the Greater Paris area. But that you cannot work in Greater Paris. All the people work in Central Paris. That's frightening. You make it also very vulnerable in that way. It was shocking to see that the public transport, which is fantastic partly in Greater Paris, is not functioning as you think it is. So it's halfway. It's not as good as Hong Kong in that way. And that actually Greater Parisians love to drive in their car. And they almost look like people in Glasgow in that way. So what to do with that? You make the map, how it scores. You compare it with other cities. And then you have maybe a target. I want to try to make with you some targets in that way. And this program, what could Glasgow be? What could the center of Glasgow be? Or Greater Paris be? So in this case, if you make a kind of, say, a piece on the horizon, you say 2030, I want to be responsible. Then I need this amount, say, of water and forestry development in and around Paris to compensate our stupid behavior. Then I need this to do for energy in all kind of variants. Then I need this to do in terms of, say, infrastructure. I need to change my habitats a little bit in different ways to accommodate a kind of better a mixture of different, say, inhabitants. I need to work on this kind of, say, equipments. And then I have a nice cadeau, a nice present for the president, this box of Pandora. That is where architecture starts to be understood, no? Because if we then open that box, we can see what landscape, where to do that. And yes, now there is a new national park coming out of that study on the southwest of say, the Ile-de-France to imagine this national park of Greater Paris. I think that's a nice project to imagine. You don't need it, you have highlands, so I guess you're already satisfied. But in this case, it's a particular specific enterprise. In energy, also it's a nice one. In this case, if we want to make on the Saclay level, so the high level on the southwest of France, we could do a lot with windmills. And the nice thing is if you make them 3 stories high, these windmills, you're used to it with your at your airport, you say that. But 3 levels of windmills I've never seen. That would be so wonderful because you can make a monument of air out of it. And that's the definition of a monument, no? And then you get this. But also this new act that every building has to be covered by solar cells, which is installed in Greater Paris, would lead to another kind of landscape and would transform the roofs enormously. I think it's very good. I know it's another kind of society. It has more, say, like an empirism than maybe in your case. But on the other hand, here, leadership sometimes help. So where ego and we go meet each other is what this question is. And then, of course, we go for its infrastructure. There's a personal obsession of me to suggest and to see that if you go to Paris, for you it's not, well, you have it. If you go to take the train that stops at Gare du Nord, and then I have to go to Lyon, I need to find a cab, I need to go further, it takes me 2 hours, and then I have to get the train again. All the trains end in Paris. Which is like very elitist. I do it a little bit in London, but that's more anyway, that's on another periphery. But here in the center part of Europe, I hate that. So we try to make now this connection at the moment. And to see that under the Place de la République, we can imagine this new carrefour, this crossing where we can meet, where all these trains can come. And you can say it's a silly, say, suggestion, but I'm happy that we make this study and to compare it now at the moment that instead of making this circle around Paris, which is happening already on the east side, but should not happen on the west side in Versailles because of the protests over there anyway, that you can facilitate in that way easier even in the very heart of your city. That would be wonderful. Then Place de la République has a fantastic, say, more meaning, and especially after the last political situations, could be beautiful. And then we start to talk about building, but also our habitats. details have to be worked out. So you see a piece, how say, yes, we have to invest enormously in this kind of grand ensemble, and I think you talk about it also in your cases to imagine that this kind of environments can be mixed more. Why can't we turn it into something which is very like mixed in that way, and where this kind of habitats can be cluttered in this kind of environments and leads to other kind of, say, social compositions. And yes, Haussmann should be solidaire, also in your case. I think you cannot invest only in your suburbs. You have to do it in your city centers and invite them for housing. Is that possible? Oh, difficult. You always see problems, namely. But it's this challenge is, I think, so valuable if you can do that. In this case, by adding just an envelope, a zoning act, where you can add one layer extra, gives so much money, tax income at the moment for Greater Paris, that I can pay off easily, say, one extra metro line in that way. And it leads to a kind of other kind of beauty in that way. I know the negotiations with UNESCO took a while, and there's maybe not in all the arrondissements that we can do it, but I find it of a beauty as such. Okay, and the Greater Paris turned into projects, in ideas that made somehow sense. And if I group them all together, then this is the map of all the projects that a group of architects are facilitating, and Atelier de Grand Paris is doing at the moment, even with new presidents and also in the nearby future. And yes, then I don't need everything. The good thing about this project is that it investigates in intensity, that evaluates ground prices at that moment, and that leads to a city that can be more compact. Grand Paris can become plus petit, is what it wants to say. Can become cuter, and then it has this beautiful, say chart. It beats Amsterdam and Copenhagen in that way. Next chapter, because then it was how to bring it to this European city feeling that we are discussing. I'll take you to Bordeaux. And this is urbanism. And urbanists are not like architects. Architects come in, they have a hat and like this long hair and then something like this. But no. As urbanists, you have to talk in that way, and you have to. That's tragical on one hand, because it costs a lot of time, and what kind of fee structure can you do? That is which is impossible. That's almost like we are volunteers of a kind of enterprise, but that it's also beautiful. And it gives a lot, because I do think it's also sincere. So here, at work in our part in Bordeaux, which is here is Bordeaux, the Garonne, and on that part we are, the Rive Gauche, we are working. What does it mean? Basically, this is Bordeaux. It's very cute, very bourgeois, of course, and it is and it's very self-confident in the somewhere in the south. And then you have these bridges, and you look. Then you turn your head, and on the left side you see UNESCO, Bobo, bourgeois, and on the right side you see shit, basically. And that's so. What is this shit? It's basically like ruins of railway yards. It's almost Scottish. And they, what to do with that? There are nice villages in between, honestly, with people that want to live that. There are, of course, new architecture that are behind screens. Oh, horrendous. And you do it as well in certain places. Right on the river, you have these housing estates with fences. I can't understand why you do it. It's a kind of the end of your city in that way. And then you have these future projects that we with 5 urbanists are doing, to make actually the Rive Droite a part of the city. So it transforms the diagram of Bordeaux, which is like on one hand built, on the other hand, not empty, but no man's land. And we want to do it in this kind of operation. I find that, and Alain Juppé, the mayor, is on top of it, such a good operation. It is an ambition to do it. It says we want to be compact, we want to live together, we want to do that in a kind of intense way, we want to love heritage everywhere possible, we want to do it in a kind of mixed way, both socially and architecturally, we want to be intimate. That is wonderful. I'll come back to it. I have some slides, what I saw today, again, in your place. And intimacy is not your cup of tea yet. So there's but actually it would be so good, because then you are going to live on the street. You meet each other, you can look into each other's eyes in that way. And yes, it's green, but not like a majestic park, because the river does the work. And yes, it should be, of course, like ecologically fantastic. And yes, it should be connected inside and out. And yes, it should love the sun. So you have, okay. So we all agree, eh? That's the issue. That's easy to do with this kind of elements. The issue is how to translate that, and that's what architects are for. So I'll give you one example, one neighborhood, how that's now going to happen. That's here in the red lines to be seen. There's In this situation, we make the new bridge that should be invisible together with an architect and an artist to make this escargot. But this is interesting. This is the point of departure. So you have railways, you have monuments, you have barracks, you have Napoleon, you have the... so what is good in this case? So what is heritage? What was that? So we then this complicated discussions on like, there's a little bit half heritage, there's a... No, let's keep everything heritage. That makes it easier. And okay, but yes, you can live with heritage. If I have a railway or a platform, you can build on top of it or with it in a way. And if you give then every piece of heritage, say, an offset, 6 to 8 meters, come back to that, then actually you have a street system, no? And then the whole history as a puzzle somehow is there. It's a little bit like that houses that I was showing in the Glasgow city in that way. That comes, then I have leftovers, and that's it. The beauty is that I make a kind of, say, environment that looks like this. These are all the streets. They are denser than everywhere on the planet, cuter than everywhere, but they're only 6 meters wide, because that is, there was a deal. They deal with this also. At the moment, I have to change the traffic. I heard that there's a kind of problem between architects and traffic designers here in the city, that you don't talk, and that's horrible. I hope there are traffic designers in the audience, because I do think that we can collaborate much better, and that we should not only think about security and then end up, of course, with streets that are 100 meters wide, because everyone has his own, say, track in a way. I cannot cross only once per 300 meters. That's what they then say, with one zebra path and one. So. How can we get rid of that? Is what the discussion that we could do. Maybe we need other traffic designers in the city than outside of the city, or say suburban traffic designers and urban traffic designers. Well, it could be an interesting, but anyway, shared space, if you want that, is also happening in the UK, but then the maximum about 3 hectares, already difficult, 2.5. So here, 35 hectares of shared space. New law has to be done. If we do that, there's still space left, in black, that they can give to others because of all these laws. That's nice in-between space that can be used, not rented, just used in that way, like this, and facilitates that. And then, of course, I have to talk about the road system. Yeah, one-way road system. There's a lot of discussion ecologically if that's doable or not. You know it, because you have to make a detour. Happily, there are electric cars in the near future, so that's not an issue anymore. So that in that way, you can make it more safe and much more fine grain of urban texture. I can walk around at that moment in that way. But also the tram lines in that way, because tram lines normally are like this. But if that doesn't work in 6 meters. I put one there and one there to do that. Wow, that I need to change the law in France for doing that. It took 2 years. Happily, Alain Juppé had something to do in that way on the national system, and that worked out in some of the parcels. Now we're done. Now we can build. Yeah, you can do this. And Juppé said, no, this is too Chinese, whatever. I said, no, wait a minute, I'm not ready. Because the one principle that, you remember this principle, sun everywhere? Then I have to cut the buildings, trim them 45 degrees to give sufficient light to the neighbor. And the nice thing is if you put it in such a way that you also can live on ground floor, that's a good discussion point, I think, also for cities like yours, that I would like to live on ground floor. Then you have to cut this and I trim it to there. Relief. Looks more European in that way. And if I make it even for ecological reasons, also like some angles from the south, to have it like that, to trim them also, even more European it's becoming. And then it starts to come, you find, because of the coincidence of the given terrain and the simple solar act, actually it becomes exciting in that way. Of course, there's small gardens in it. There are 144 architects working on it now, on this moment. There's a ventilation issue that I solved, don't care about that. There's some adjustments. There's the solar panels on the roof and the vegetation where I can, on the roof where I can keep the water in that way. But let's go to the details at the moment. If this is one piece of the site, this is in our computers. I extrude it, that's horrible. I trim it for 45 degrees, for 22 degrees in another direction, with the adjustments that we need, the different architects that are there, and with all the different elements that we do, the solar panels and the green, and I think, wow. I think I make a new kind of roofscape, a kind of landscape of houses that love each other, that respect the other. The neighbor has light. And I give that to him or her, is what it wants to say. This seems to me a European way of dealing with the next, say, rules. And here you see the model, how it's on the river, how it's there, and on the other side, now under construction, how we make these cute streets. I hope this beautiful roof feeling that is there. There is no high rises. Don't worry, we don't need it for this density. With an MVR of 3.2, I can still do that, which is already kind of quite a lot. And yes, then we can have this kind of cuteness in our streets. And in the end, of course, we have this bridge that will also connect to it. The film doesn't work, so that's it. So that's about Bordeaux. But yeah, now I'll bring you back to Rotterdam. Why Rotterdam? Because I come back to it later, because somehow Glasgow and Rotterdam have something in common. You have Edinburgh, we have Amsterdam in it. We have a port, you have a port. You have riots, we have riots. You have poverty, we have poverty. We have, etc. So there's a lot to share on this, and how to deal with that is what we did. So this is how Rotterdam looked. It was based indeed on the sport. This was the momentum where a lot of things happened in 1940, and then it turned into this kind of situation. The Rotterdammers, they said, okay, we want to embrace it. We want to make modernity in it. And actually very beautiful buildings are there. And I will come back to it later, because somehow I love it. These postcards came out of it. It had an optimism. You can say what you want. And when I look to Milton Keynes, I sometimes doubt. But there is this kind of idea that it is beautiful. So it took a position on the global market, Rotterdam. So it was not so stupid that it went on a right moment to get this stuff, not in the city, but to put it outsourced. It started slightly earlier in the process of, say, putting the industry out of the city than you did. So that was, and that you can still see. This kind of, say, 15 years difference, one could say. So due to that, Rotterdam grew tremendously and made new ports even into the sea to use its economy, built houses for working class people, and at that moment, of course, a lot of migration came to Rotterdam, like many cities, and we had to live with it. At the same moment, we had also to deal with drugs more because of the port than ever, so how to regulate it, and with prostitution, and Rotterdam wouldn't be Rotterdam in order to face it in a certain way and to say, okay, we make these prostitution zones and you can have your car, you can do it behind the screen, that's that. So I've never did it, but I think it's a funny thing to have it there. Same with the heroin. In the same moment, I think some of the cruise ships didn't come anymore to Rotterdam because there were problems in the city. Rotterdam was not so nice. It was not Amsterdam, where everything was. And so, of course, what could we do in Rotterdam? We started to play soccer. We had Feyenoord. Even our kids became a little bit brutal in that way. And it was a bit anxious to see that at that moment. So we have politicians that somehow that was born and shot afterwards, and that started to deal with that, with it, how to deal with it, populism. That's part of it in that way. And I think what I found a very beautiful moment that it was that it became very openly in a lot of elements. So, for instance, the declaration that the drugs were no crime in Rotterdam. Took some courage to do that, and how to do that. I think it was splendid. It helped a lot to position it easier and to live with it. And that meant, of course, there were issues. In the beginning, the police had to deal with that. There were even zones with a curfew at a certain moment. And there was this kind of Rotterdam wet, the law of Rotterdam, that became exemplary as a toolbox in the rest of the Netherlands by itself. So that indicated a little bit an epoch of struggle, you could see, of ugliness also. That was part of our operation, and maybe you feel similar components. But then there was this at a certain moment, 96, and there was this bridge suddenly there on the planet. It costed 100 million extra in order to finance it versus a normal. The economics of beauty entered Rotterdam. So if you make things slightly more beautiful, it pays off. Can you calculate where is the university here in the place? Because you have to help her to make this calculation, to say, why do you not make it slightly more beautiful? How can you afford social housing in that way, which is a treasure for you, to make that more better? Where are your researchers that can help you on that? I think it's so needed, and that helped in this case. That is 100 million euros were somehow calculated in 25 years paying back. And it worked in that way. So Rotterdam became a cultural city in that way, also like one of those things to have festivals in that way. Rotterdam took the climate change already serious in about, say, 2000, when it made a super expensive element to get water out of the city. We have to, because everything is on -4 meters. So it was a very complex situation to deal with bigger issues and later also with social issues. Because of this thing, people could make this housing now in the very city center, beyond the dikes as such. And yes, then this kind of places, the Kaap, it's kind of a former prostitute area, could become in a cool, say, skyscraper zone, or other places could be intensified because of this Maarland, because of this dike that we could do. And at the same moment, it was very smart. We have to work also on, say, these labor zones in the city. Don't make only gentrifying area. I know that's a taboo word in Glasgow, but on the other hand, you have to, I think it's good to deal with both sides. You need to make a mixed society, but that makes also the repair of these neighborhoods with doing yourself, facilitating element, getting this kind of gardens in. Also, say, making housing for different, say, minorities or other groups that could be at that moment embedded in it, but also like people that wanted to have a kind of bigger house. Townhouses are fantastic to have. Why aren't they not yet in your city center? Why do you never consider that as an operation? And in the meantime here, this is I think the Roof Park project in Rotterdam is fantastic. It covers basically all this kind of shitty warehouses. And all this building Walmart stuff, and you turn it into a park. That kind of stuff started to mixing is important to deal with another. And then the city center changed where you did make such a park. You add new stuff to it, like if you do a high-rise, do it cool, and do it mixed. Where are the developers that only work on offices or only on housing? When can we share a lift in that way? How can we facilitate laws that somehow make that more possible and adventures in a way? And or are you afraid of it? And we make a new station, of course. That's also the turn into. But I love also this project. I think the Rotterdammers made a fantastic pavement. I mean, they choose marble somewhere from mid-China, and everywhere is marble now. So even the shittiest building, shittiest architecture, you don't care. It's like an ugly duck on a beautiful. If New York would have done that, it would have much better in that moment. But and then of course our ship comes back, and it turns into a hotel and is also on that place. But it's not only that; it's also like reusing of some of the buildings, trying to make roof areas like this for farming initiatives that are bottom up, that are, say, hipster driven. I know there are mocking hipsters also these days to get investors into that direction. I'm aware, but there's a whole technique about it. But you have to make a very varied society with these things happen, where this kind of elements are combined in our. This is an Islamic neighborhood, by the way. So that's how that could be imagined, with prices that that create initiatives for people to make something like this one, or this restaurant that is working on it, or this festival that comes to life, or this former swimming pool that becomes a mushroom factory in that way. So you have, or this kind of, of course, the hipster place of the Netherlands, where you can have the best, say, beard to be trimmed, is also now there. And yes, then you can also, this kind of initiatives come there. And these buses that are now into our water, and that because someone took the risk to do that and facilitate that. And then, yes, tourists are suddenly coming into Rotterdam. They were never there. Wait a minute. They all went to Amsterdam. And this, I think, is a crucial diagram, because we were also planning to make the World Expo in that way. And we said, okay, we are going to invest in the next, say, area. We don't. And why is that good? Not because the World Expo is not coming and I would love to have it, but you are investing, you're not growing. You want to invest in what you have, in the existing, and to make that intenser. That is what this new act is doing, to wait with this zone. This could be of a certain recommendation, to be honest, in that way. And then, of course, we work with the universities to have this kind of test zones. Then the new kind of roads are now under construction to make that. And so you work on different levels. And, of course, I love my mayor in that way, who is who indeed, like has been shown maybe last year after the terrorism in Paris, he wanted to say something. He's not becoming our prime minister, I can tell you that. That's the good part. He maybe he comes as a second draw, but and so he stays in that role, but he behaves on a kind of level that I think cities should behave. This person has to talk with your person in that way, with Frank. And yes, you have to talk with each other to make yourself differentiated and to lead somehow this kind of operation. And I'm happy to be part of Rotterdam in that way. We do this kind of, jobs over the landscape, and of course some of you might know that you start small. XS to XL, I'm talking today. So this was the idea, that we make this kind of extension of housing. You remember this kind of what we did in Paris? What it could be? Here you have the house, you need some infrastructure, some structure, some waterproofing and trees and some houses, and then it's done. That's basically what we try to do to facilitate. You see the infrastructure, you go up to the houses, you can live there, you meet your friends, and you come back into the other house. But the basic thing, of course, is that this village is somehow in between Rotterdam and God, something like this church, and that you want to say, also advertise that that's beautiful, that it could be a place for the middle class to go there and not to go out of the city. You have to make possibilities for the middle class in order to stay out of your center. When are you going to make this best rooftop festival in your city? When are you going to build on top of some of your roofs this kind of environments that suddenly you love to be there? And you think it's also an advertisement that you can see from far, and which is not kind of Photoshop collage, but a reality that advertises at that moment the beauty of that operation, and that concentrates on Rotterdam, and that even in, say, this labor areas, you can do that in that way. And you can see it from every tower in Rotterdam, and from, say, okay, any plane that passes by Rotterdam with 40 square meters, I can do it. XS matters in that way, is what I want to say. And what's the next? Yes, it gave some revenues. There were a lot of, people that somehow now understand that, and that communicates as a kind of, political vehicle to make it now applied. Currently, we're working on the depot. I'm not going to show that in detail. It starts next week on the construction. It is also part of that operation, embedded in the very heart of the city, next to where you live, but to make, a building that reflects Rotterdam in that way, that makes it possible to look around the corner, and that embeds this new museum typology, the archives, which normally are somewhere out in the periphery, but it becomes part of our domain, our treasure. And I want to show that and to be that on that place. But of course, the market hall deserves, in this context, a small explanation to you. So, this is one of those places in Rotterdam, shitty at that moment, with no urbanism. You recognize it? And what to do there. So initially this was the demand to make, 250 houses and like a market hall in between. Something like Barcelona, something like Miralles in that way. And, but yeah, to the developers said, this is horrible. You make the first market hall in the Netherlands, and you turn it into this kind of shitty low ceiling space. And what can we do? It's better to twist it and to say then that food is good in that way, and we need to make good food, and that you use the houses, lower middle class houses, to make actually this building, and you have more penthouses, so that makes it easier to sell. And I said, that may be nice, okay, but they have no view, these penthouses, so okay, you have to bend it. Maybe nice, but this is a lot of steel. I can't afford that. Okay, so we bend it like Beckham and Huppakee. There we had this arch in that way. But where's the lift in that way? And so there was no Mitsubishi lift lab, so we have to make it straighter, and then it becomes how it is. And then we made simply Dutch technology to make that building. A modest facade. We used the tiles of Rotterdam, goes over it, because I love that project. And then the interior that celebrates food, and where you can, with your windows, you can open it, you can shout down to your son that he has to bring the fish up. So somehow, it's not populist. It's pop, I would say. I think that would be the correct answer to this populist, stupid movement in the world, or also in the Netherlands in that way. To engage ourselves, but to be active in that way in solving issues and to participate in this inclusive society. And then then at a certain moment when this became into life, then the Dutch wake up. They say, whoa, there's something happening there. And our queen wake up. And she said, I want to come. And so she came, and that was very nice. So to celebrate this, and she behaved like Cinderella. So that was, turned into a kind of course, and not only an advertisement also, but people wanted to see not a building, but her. And but it helped a lot, because I was also stunned by that. Because then you opened the doors, and then we had to close them in half an hour, because the fire equipment was not calculated for it. That we needed more smoke exhaust. We need more door handles in that way. So overnight, that had to be done suddenly, because it was too busy. If we can make buildings like that, where that would be wonderful, where you can hang out, where you can need slaughter access also in part of it, where you can sit and where you can look to each other and buy things, where the houses are part of it, where I can sleep next to it, and where because of these windows, I can control the investors and developers over there. They cannot change that hall so directly, because they have 250 of these guys that say maybe no in that way. I think that is a kind of open, say, public-private enterprise. So suddenly private space becomes also somehow public, is what it wants to say. So here, ego becomes also, due to this, I know it's an expensive window, to make that possible in that way. And the windows are everywhere. Yes, I can play on top of the windows. Is what the housing is more than only safety. It is what this slides want to say. And I have this beautiful views as such. And then I'm outside again. And then I make a place somehow which heats up Rotterdam. It's cold. You are complaining that the rain. I'm not allowed, and I will later to show images from Barcelona, which is a nice weather, etc. Here in every planning, you complain about the rain. No, man, it's nice also the rain, and it's part of it. But somehow to deal with it, a bigger window helps for that. Even in Rotterdam, I can be there in the winter. I hang out now. Is it ecological? Somehow. A new kind of ecology comes here to make that possible. And with this banded high-rise at that moment in that landscape of Rotterdam, we made that moment. And yeah, there was some, afterwards, some publications on it. That was very nice at that moment. Indeed, it became even more busy. Again, we had to close the market hall. So it's busier than Euro Disney. I'm very sorry. But that's how and it became, hey, Rotterdam came into the guidebooks. Never gone there. Lonely Planet was there to have it. And now, because this is happening, and somehow we love it, but now Rotterdammers are saying, hey, we don't want to be like Amsterdam. We just flooded with EasyJet guys that drink a lot and that hang out and that places. But nicer is this, of course, that it becomes also a point where more people want to celebrate and use it as a background, or where the marathon suddenly has a kind of a point, or this one. This is the campaign of this one, because it's the Ministry of Social and Educational Affairs in the Netherlands, and there are not enough teachers in the Netherlands. It's so sad, right? That you don't want to teach. The wages are too low, and it makes me cry. So they make this kind of advertisement that it is only possible by teachers like you, leraren als jij. That's what this campaign. And I was a little bit touched by that, and of course, your Jamie is also now part of our situation. So that's about it. So a building can help. What is an icon? Where should it be? Outside of the city or on a crucial point? You sometimes made a mistake, I'm honest, by some buildings on another place. Or it takes a while when we have made all that roads to there, or all this, to have it embedded in our city environment. And that's what this building maybe says, that it could help, and that you have to formulate it in a certain way. The last project that I want to show about Rotterdam is the trap, the stairs. Why? Because this is XXS in a way. This was the sketch at the moment that we celebrated the renovation of Rotterdam after the bombardment, 75 years. The wederopbouw is it called, the rebuilding. And what can we do with a wederopbouw? We make a tweede opbouw. That's the second. It's a Dutch joke as such, to do that by celebrating it by the stairs that activate at that moment the roof. They took that for serious. And this sketches that somehow, why there? Why is a stair good? Because you don't have to go inside, talk endlessly with a kind of stubborn portier or a person in the entrance that don't let you in, and then you have to show your ID, etc. So no. This is in the public space. Can we achieve that like the Spanish stairs? It took a while, and then that's exactly with Abu Talib, on the Central Station Plaza, after the riots in Cologne and in Paris and in Brussels, to work with the mayor, with the police, to find a way to deal even on situations where terrorism could happen, to make that possible. That is Europe, to get it somehow, to overcome that not only leading to protectionism. And then I was, of course, happy that that moment was there, that he was opening this place, and that, wow, there were more people waiting for that. They were queuing up to go up. It has been there for 4 weeks in that way, 400,000 people on the stairs, that endlessly, like this. We could only shoot these films endlessly. The people wanted to go up. I didn't expect it, to be honest. You don't know that. You suggest that, and there's a kind of, somehow it's a combination of wanting to be healthy, wanting to go up, wanting to celebrate your city, and to overlook the city, that we don't have mountains, like in Edinburgh, so we have to do it in another way. And that is suddenly that this element took that for granted and lead to this kind of viewing points to endless amount, of course, of selfish that could be made over there, and to celebrate with each other, also me, in that way, with my wife, and to look over the city and to go in the end down. And people went up every day in that way. We stimulated anti-obesitas by that, by having some kind of walks over it. Wasn't that part of your desire, to get people running over it? And then these are the shots from the air, how it turned out and what's next. Indeed, a lot of people came into it. It was built in mini Rotterdam afterwards. I didn't know, but it was funny to see in that way. It became part of the icons of the city suddenly. I mean, temporary. Can we do that? You have to make that landscape of icons also. It turned, of course, into suites and all kind of elements. It started to be used by our national music feeling. The hooligans of Feyenoord became part of our... That is what we should do. If the hooligans are part of us, then I am happy with that. It became the place for marrying. It was a celebration place for showing things. It was a meeting place for models at that moment, and where we could slide down in a certain moment also to celebrate our city. It is also true that there was a person, 80 years old, that got a heart attack on that. So being healthy is, and yes, you have to facilitate these environments also with sufficient amount of healthcare to make that also possible. It's part of the game. Density needs to this kind of facility. I'm so proud that we demand lives, and it's no problem in that way, that we knew it in advance and that we could do that in that way, and that health and safety requirements sometimes are good things. But how to translate that is the question to do that. And yes, now it becomes this kind of elements, because this kind of quotes, and one of Europe's most underrated cities because of the stairs. Now that's cool. And of course, with our national singer, we could have this kind of, say, stages in that way. But what is next? You make a stair, and it's a temporary thing. And then I think you have to do it. You have festivals that could be much more visible in that way. Where now you're making this kind of glowing city, glass glow, in a glass, that could be even more there. Why do you ruin that festival? Well, who was so stupid to forget that in a city of darkness and rain, to not do that anymore? I think you can do it. And all the tunnels and all the bridges, you could illuminate that way. So here, this is the first step of what we call the bovenstad, the upper stad, the next layer, intensification. We start, and these are, say, some of the discussions we have at the moment. So when this is gone, like it is now, yes, next year, we do a permanent feature for that, with all the elements. Yes, I dream that this station could be also nicer with that. I love that our national theater would become somehow usable. And this project, our department store, a very good one, the Bijenkorf, bang. You will see it in a year from there. I asked the mayor also that he will participate in this operation. That some developers are happy with it. That, of course, the Vanelle is using it. That the NAI finally becomes nice. that Rem Koolhaas is participating in our situation also in his next building to have this, that our hipsters are part of it, that we do that also with all the concert groups that are there, that we make in the southern part also these connections, that the Holland-America line becomes nicer, and that we have this also Meccano part in it, or the library suddenly can be accessed. That is all the dream that we have. And then we can say, okay, then the market hall can also maybe be nicer in the future, and that's how our building gets also an access, and say the owner is already happily dreaming about this Facebook page that is there. But of course, what happens then? Here, first stair, second combination, third. This is what we're now trying to achieve around the station, so that in a while you have this walk around the station on the second level in the city. Was it S? Was it an M scale that I'm talking about? Exactly this mixture is what I think is what we are dealing with and what we should face. And that I can work out more. And then I'll take you to the next example on a like, let's say then an S level as such. Here, I take you to now cuteness. Now we are in a village, Schijndel, my hometown. Well, town, 18,000 people. And it's, my parents live there, but it's, I have to say, it's the ugliest village of the Netherlands. And it is bombarded by the Americans and caused a lot of heaps. So when I was 18, I wrote this letter to the mayor saying, oh, what can we do? I want to build things in. It's like a little bit like Glasgow. What can we do things in? And the mayor was very nice. He said to me, like, yeah, it's a good idea, Mr. Maas. We shall do on this marketplace, on the center, we are going to intensify that. And yeah, we organize, you will hear from me. That took him 30 years to come back to it. And then he said, yeah, we were a little bit famous. What would you like to do? So this was the old drawing. This was basically the bombardment. So here you see it happening, the old city, bang. Then this new urbanism comes in, emptiness. That was basically the... So what to do if this was the idea and this was happening afterwards? He said, yeah, I want to have a building that somehow the mayor of Amsterdam would recognize. So that's easy. He said, they make a skyscraper 400 meter high, and you can see it from Amsterdam, and it's like it's 100k away. So they took it serious. Let me be honest. That's the nice thing, about politicians, to find like a system where you're taken serious, even if you look funny. I mean, and that's. So they took it, they studied it, and then after a year, no, it doesn't work. No. You have one chance to give another idea, but now you have to talk with everybody. Oops. So that was, I think, a nice moment. So the Schijndel village has 17 parties. Huh? Again, I stress that because it's, I guess in the end it's better than this dialectics in the US. So there is, and they're all here. So like sitting there from left to right or from right, I don't know. And then, so what do you want to have? And he said, should a building like this? Yeah, he said, but then, nah. So it ended up in the middle. How high? You are the tower guy, but smaller, and then in the middle. And what kind of roof in that way? Somewhere like my neighbors. So it ended up with this volume in that way. And I find it interesting, a bit Freudian, I'm aware, but it's like, because if you go around Schijndel, then this is basically their repertoire of buildings, and they have hundreds of them in that way. And if you organize, you look at carefully what they share, and you make photographs of everything, here an example of this one, and you have the new photograph techniques that you all know, and you start to analyze it and compare it, and we can calculate the average, basically. And we did that for every feature in that way. What is the average farm? That's interesting. The average farmhouse, glass house, is this. That's half as big as a given volume that we negotiated. So, wow, that's a cool moment. I said, no, you want to keep the same, but like Calimero, make it slightly bigger. So what do? We make it bigger. So you have a door that goes open like this, of course, and a window there. But that, so we could make that, and that would be beautiful. So the mayor said, okay, we accept it. It's a little bit ironic, no? I said, Mr. Mayor, without irony, we cannot design. If everything leads to seriousness, then we cannot survive. Then we cannot relativate. So that's an art, I must say, how to relativate our failures. So, okay, fair. We all share this. We see this as an instrument to consider our existence. But now the rest is classical. Now it's done. What do you mean? Yeah, no, material. So what? Yeah, like straw and tiles and bricks and wood and glass. Yeah, glass also is good. So we made it work, and we made it farm, and everything is glass now. And that's so you can see we printed the average farm on it. So it is so every deal shares this idea to show the average farm. And it's suddenly, even if there's a shop inside, it becomes a public instrumentum in that way. And all the details are made for that, in that way. So how to deal with it. And this is schijndel. It becomes a mirror in different ways for the community. It costed some time to do that and to rent the farms, to rent it out, to have the renders done. That was both in Argentina as in Japan. We had to do that, and to print it somewhere in the middle of France, to burn it into the glass, and to have that done. And even if there's vandalism, the nice thing, after 2 years, there's no vandalism in this place. So that's also a contradiction. But of course, the interior is even more wonderful. It made the biggest rose window in the city, and everywhere is this farmhouse, this average farmhouse. I mean, when you cook, it's there. When you wash your hands, it's there. You are drenched in the farming, and it doesn't matter with the interior architecture, because you are there, and it becomes part of us wherever you are in this house. And of course, it's opened up. Of course, you are cute sitting over there, and the doors are a bit bigger. And of course, say also the commerce are part of it and celebrate this combination, despite the retail designers that are maybe here around. And this kind of details are added to it. This is the symbol of schijndel in that way, evaporating, yes or not, looking to each other, and it turns into a lantern that also is visible in the night. Now, people from Japan come. Some British also come, and I remember this moment that the BBC came, and that the mayor, who didn't speak a word of English, and had to train himself to explain it for the BBC how proud he was in his language. It was very cool that he did it in Dutch, or actually in Flemish, and that they had to subtitle him. I think it's still better. That was so here, specialization versus Europeanization is somehow celebrated. That's what I wanted to show. And the mayor was even more proud when the mayor of Amsterdam came. The mayor of Amsterdam he was impressed, and he said, okay, I have a problem, because maybe you can help on it. The mayor said, yes, I'll do it. No, the architect. And so what to do? This is a symbol of a street. There's in Amsterdam. Streets in Amsterdam look like that. They turn in the 50s like that. And then some of them, because of the success of tourism and the museums, the Rijksmuseum and Stedelijk, there a lot of, say, shopping is going to enter. Miu Miu's, Prada's, and they want to be bigger. So the desire, the target, and I think it's quite okay. It's quite gentrified, I know. But it's also like, why can't we become like the Champs-Élysées? Why can Amsterdam also not participate in this Ginza operation? What does it mean? 3,000 square meter shops in that way that wants to be in a local situation. I think it's a very interesting one. They want to be Parisian or Amsterdamish, but they want to be transparent, and how to combine that. That's the story of this place. So if we look to this place, and you look at the old drawings, and here are they, and then this is what happened over the time, and then the architect that was working on it made something like this horrible vernacular architecture, which also has somehow, I think it's invented in the UK by Prince Charles, but it's like, and they said, no, let's not do it. Let's bring it back to the old houses, just make it, pump it up a little bit, the schijndel experience in that way, and then turn everything into brick. Oh yeah. It was glass brick in that way. And then, oh, this looks good. You can see everything is brick, it works technically. It is somehow, I'm in Amsterdam and I'm in the world. And what can happen on this site with the view to the Vondelpark, I can see through in that way. The Vondelpark is part of it. And of course, in the evening, it would be wonderful. So they loved it, the developers and the investors. But then the mayor said, I have a problem. Because the beauty committee, that happens in the Netherlands, they say it's too much glass. Why? Yeah, we have bricks, baked bricks, not glass bricks also. I say, how much? Yeah, we don't know, but you have to make it out of bricks. So we calculated what is the amount of bricks that is in the area. You come around 20%. It's basically bricks, because shops have a tendency to make it glass. That's good. So if you do that on this place, and we would like to have this, and the municipality would like to have this at that moment, then with this kind of research that we did, we could negotiate it out. And then you have this, and that has been now built, and realized in that way. a compromise can be beautiful, as long as you make it visible as such, very clear. Then it becomes almost like not only dialectic, but also didactic in a way. And that helps to make the next layer in town. Of course, we have to work hard with some Venetian people to make these blocks and to test it then with our engineers, the pressure. We had to invent a certain kind of glue. We did it with Italian, Greek, dentists, because they have the best glue in that way, and to make them then also work, we had to test it again with the UV, again in these different directions, and yes, it worked. Except for certain parts. Here we have to thicken the bricks in that way to make it possible, again with the dentists in that way. And then and we calculated again this thickening, and yes, it worked. So the self-load would work in that way. Then we mix the wood, all the panels, all elements that are in that composition. These are all the panels in Italy that we are mounting it together and working on it here, on all the details as such. Oh, we missed the beams. So how to make beams out of that? And that was a special research that we did, and you see it happening, and actually quite gorgeous, I think. And the most expensive detail, of course, this, was how to glue bricks with normal bricks. You have to glassify, basically, the bricks in order to have a good, so you don't want to know the price. So what was next, of course, is that we built it on the site during 2.5 years, more or less. It takes, as you can see, a beautiful team of guys with huge fingers and tattoos everywhere, and that stayed in the house and that had to collaborate with these Italian girls, and work on this. That was wonderful. They lived in the house in that way, because to make it every hour, 1 stone, every 1 hour, because you have to treat it like that and to make that possible. And then you do it like that. I still love that moment and wish that I could, almost like Zen. When do you have time for 2 years in your life to only dedicate that to this kind of purity? And I think that is what was a part of it. And then what's next? And we now walk through the street, I combine, and I see then this element, solid glass over there, that is there, and that is kind of evaporating to the top. And we can go in. And everyone wants to touch the building. I think that I think is lovely. When do we want to touch someone or touch a building in this case? So that is what's happening here, and in the interior becomes Amsterdam and global, is what it wants to say. And is this costly? Yes, of course. This is not social housing. Is it affordable? So, yes, it's affordable housing for Gucci and Prada in that way, because then it's in that level, I think it makes it sense. And now, yes, it is there. It is this evaporating crystal house that also in the night is there, where people continue touching it and where you can celebrate it in its wider sense. And then I'm somehow happy. And it's an XS element, you can say, and we're not talking about XL. But then we continue. What we do now in Hong Kong, we make this glass, say office, to test also that you can classify everything in an office floor acoustically, and then with all the treatments that are over there. And in Venice, we try to make a glass kitchen at the moment, where every detail, also the refrigerators are made out of glass. If the cooking equipment is made out of glass, how can you make pipework that's made out of glass, where you show what is happening in there in order to stress, say, the beauty of cooking itself, and that you clean it, yes, because you have to clean it in that way, that it becomes in that way also more there. And now this kitchen is in Chengdu in the future to see it, but it's part, XXS, of a larger phenomenon. I mean, I sometimes dream about this, about the momentum that I can be, that this could be Chanel in that way, and that I can be there. And of course, the things that are intimate are mirrored, so that I can continue looking at it. But that even the chairs, the pianos, the tramways, the cars are there, and that I always, in density, can still see the highlands. That would be fantastic somehow to do that, no? Because then you are more contextual than ever. And if we could do that, then this operation is more than XS in a way, to be said that. Now I take you to the 2 last examples. One is maybe the most extravagant one, and some people will love it and some will hate it. This is the disclaimer already to start with you, because or I'm now kicked out of the country, or or people like me in a little bit. This is then XXS, just a small example, because and it's called Barbapapa. Because Barbapapa is wonderful, because he or she can change itself. You know the comic, maybe from the 70s, and it can adapt itself. So we made this book with the Y Factory that was like celebrating basically this new technology made by Axel Nobel and by other chemical industries, BASF, to make a CHO, a connection with electricity. I can solidify, or I can open it up. This is like concrete that becomes, again, fluid in that way, rubber. Imagine that you do these molecules. You know Ben Ehringa, maybe the Nobel Prize winner, who just 3 months ago, who was collaborating in this project, who's working on this element to make this. What would happen then? Then I can make furniture, pull it out of the ground wherever I want. I just use my mobile, or I can open up windows wherever I want in that way, is what it's going to say. And this is kind of wonderful because it means there's a critique on our current, say, behavior. Because this is a house. I'm sitting, and my wife comes there, she puts her thing in her wardrobe, we sit together to watch a movie. But then I don't need the other space, is what it wants to say. It's like it could shrink. If we sleep, I don't need a rest in that way. So why don't we make it smaller? When we raise and we go out again, then we need this part of the house only. And if I go to the office, then the house can be away, is what is. And then the office there's only one person still there. Then it becomes bigger during the day, and we start to work together and have a celebration in the end. And these are the different spaces that is needed. So, but also my neighbors react on that. And that's what you can see in this kind of hypothesis. We only need about 30% of our cubic meters, if this research is showing. So we make the stupidity, if we think about austerity in the future, then this could be maybe a way to consider it. But can we do that? Is it what it wants? I still love this moment in the film where this lift is passing by in that way, and you say, "Oh, how is that possible?" And it always reminds me when I'm in IKEA. I love IKEA, and then when with my kids, and then and then there are these kids playing in this ball space. You know what? So you throw your kid in it, and then but other kids don't feel. They only do this. The material dampens, and that's somehow what is happening also in this situation. If you do that material, then this kind of thing can happen. So what happens in that way is then with, say, the students, we try to investigate what is the consequence if we ask BASF now to make some kind of stuff. So we make this film that every student has gets 1 minute to say one issue. So 24 hours. I sleep. Start with that. What happens? Of course, a beautiful guy, a Leni Riefenstahl feeling. But then I wake up and I need space. I know. I don't say it's literal space. It's an investigation on how much we need. The material, like in Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, pushes you up so that you can start to walk. And then you are discussing how deep should my space be. So here, okay. So you walk. Space goes before you because I need to see and then mitigate to go there. And at a certain moment, I don't need it in the back anymore, so that can go away. How long? What is the memory of space is what this question is. And it's a theoretical project. I'm sorry for that. And then I go further in that way. I wanted to open a window. And then I wonder, how can I open a window? I still love this moment that you do basically like in a movie, that you say there is sun. Basically, if we can do that simply like that, where are the window makers here in the audience? Because if we can do that, it's much nicer to do that. And then it continues, because if we can make and facilitate, make that kind of windows out of that kind of stuff, the stuff exists. If you have a heart operation, which is electrically operated by these things, then it works like that. This is also a nice moment. And my son comes with his dog, and then this moment that you bang, that it opens up his mind for me or me for him, is what it wants to say. How to do that? How to make that? What's the door in this material, is what is his question. Or how does the sewage go? The water pipes that do this kind of movement, peristaltic, that go at every place at that moment. It makes this dream possible that wherever I am, I can jump, and I can swim, basically. That would be fantastic in that way, that every bedroom has that facility as such in a quick go or no-go moment. And it's also nice to see it because I'm swimming, but what is moving? That's the question in the end. So I see a sun here, the section shows it. What is moving in this case? Am I moving or is the building moving? Like in the gym, basically. So that is, I think, a philosophical situation. What happened in that case is that Barba material is everywhere. So what is the next in our research? We have to investigate how that movement is. So here a PhD is working on, say, what kind of space do we need with Muybridge captures in that way, and use that as a kind of, say, tool to estimate the space that you need also in front of you. We work with these students and with with Vitra on a kind of test. If you have, say, a carpet to start with, and you want to, that's lying there, and you want to send a message to the carpet and turns at that moment into something else. So you use basically a chicken wire in combination with felt to activate that with sensors and with your voice. But this is the nice moment that becomes like a share, or that to what kind of force can do that, and how much is that? So that I can calculate or ask Axo Nobel to have this kind of model of making a chair for me is what this is going to do. And then we can have to activate that. So here the talking napkins are helping to communicate with me and the material in that way. If it goes a bit fast, there it is. So it is a test also paid by the universities, and so I have 2 napkins as such, and then I put my hand on one other, and the other reacts. So how that is, I think, the next thing. Nice word, door handles, but this in the future will be much more activated. Or I can do it by sound in that way. In this, say, installation that is, say, also paid by the same people, to imagine a kind of wall that talks with you, and to see what can happen. So there are the specs, not interesting to see, but I can't speed up because, give me 1 second. Yeah, here it comes. These are the specs. So it's very simple technology as a model to make a complex chemistry thinkable. These are the different panels that are there. So here, one of the students, researchers are doing there. He loves that wall, obviously. She reacts. So how should she react is, of course, a question in that moment. How can we be on control of that or none of control? So he starts to talk. She becomes still okay with it. And so what kind of movement should react to that is what robots are doing it. Why can't our houses or next domotica not do it? Then he becomes angry, and then she becomes super angry also. So that's what basically we try to do. But yeah, what am I doing then at that moment? Is this XXS or is this XXL? Because if this is true, then on Saint-Exupéry could come true. If this is an environment that we create, that could be, on one hand, super scary. We lose control. On the other hand, super exciting to do that. When is it happening? I'm not sure, but Barbara Papa House, a couple of years, will be there. Is there also Barbara Papa City coming up? Would we solve your city in that way enormously if we do that? But it makes the loop of XS to XL very clear. And then, of course, I end with Glasgow. So they give me the last, say, 5 minutes of your time to not to conclude, because we're in the middle of a process. We try to do our best that our or your city, where bottom-up and top-down, is somehow celebrated as such. From this XL to XS, from the other way direction, is of course a medium scale, like Rotterdam. And this campaign is somehow, you can say, is now an instrument for our own benefit. No. It's a kind of an exercise that hopes to be built, and that doesn't want to be an exercise. That has a different, let's give you an intro on it. So there's an assignment that we want to compete with other towns in the vicinity, that we concentrate for a moment on a city center, that we do that in different, say, parts of the city center, and that we now work on Brumilo as a starter, as an eye-opener to later to continue in the other neighborhoods, that we concentrate for a minute on this piece of it, because that's urgent, as you know, in the coming weeks, when you are deciding to go on or not. And then I wanted to what can we do? I mean, if I drive around in this is Glasgow, you know it, and so with no image of sun, I will do that, because we have to make a city that under this kind of conditions is gorgeous. That is what it should be. Where every mishmash of architecture is lovable as such, and where the in-between, and we have a king of the in-between here in the room, to have that somehow celebrated. And I mean, go to these places, and where is the facade? Where can I hook up? Huge traffic elements are there. You can park everywhere where you want in your city. You have chunks of history as such. I love this one, where there's somehow a nice gesture of a curve, but there's so much left over in that space. And why is there no master of the leftovers that somehow wants to deal with that and that makes it into something? Why is it continuing? Why do you make fences at any place to what are you protecting? I have no clue do in our society in that way. And then this is also a gorgeous traffic designer who made this kind of impenetrable environment. And of course, there's a piece of new architecture that you celebrated last year in the Prize of Architecture. Let's also hug it. Let's make it surrounding for this guy on the left side to make it better. And then you continue, of course, with hopefully a beautiful project over there. And with this kind of environments as such, where you exploded even some buildings to make, and I think that was nice. Because there is optimism here and there. With such a kind of element that glows in the dark, then I think you do something with your environment, with this celebrating, knocking this down. Or go to the next corner. Then with all the despair that surrounds this place, is also a beauty that you are trying to make. So there is something in it. Like in Rotterdam, that there is a seed that I would love to see. Or even in this, of course there should be buildings on that lawn. And to make it more intimate as such. But yes, of course, this can be wonderful soon to celebrate this kind of openness at that moment. Or if you make alleys, there are a lot of them. The back elements in that way. I dream with you to somehow to make this kind of heaters that turn this back alley into a fantastic space to sit. To twist the back into the front. To go from this subversive action from XS to XL. So that's what the project is about. To make small projects, but to think about a larger domain at the same moment. To defend and to do that publicly, to make a kind of, a process where these 2 rhythms or 3 rhythms are at the same moment. And that leads now to this kind of baseline report where we talk about how does your center perform, with this kind of images, with pavements that are not used, with lack of access to the water. I guess there should be something done on that riverside, ladies and gentlemen. Why are you waiting so long? I can't understand it. Who talks about it more openly? You talk already a long time about this lawn in that way, and that I would say keep it as it is, and we just do the rest of the city, so that you can. There's one element which you continue just talking about, and then we can, in the slipstream, you can do the rest. But it is, of course, about the remarkability of public space that you are finding out at that moment. Somehow there is a lack of green and trees, and there's much asphalt. Maybe it's also like something which is good, because now you have the space to do something. You didn't design it yet in that way. And then, of course, that can be in many places. I mean, I have never seen a city, Dublin, that has less trees than your city center, if you count them as such. That's scary, no? And then, of course, you have empty lots, and there's quite a lot of them. That also is not bad, if it were not already being taken by this kind of ghost owners that are somehow there, and that keep it, wait, whatever it can do, how to go beyond that in that way. It's very underpopulated, your city center. It's shocking, eh? I mean, as you compare it with other cities, how many people not live in the city center? You want to live in your suburbs, maybe, that's fair, but on the other hand, if you want to survive, and if you want to turn it into something, then you have to actively make housing in that city center, and not like 800 or 8,000 more in that way. It's so modest what you are. I don't know why are you that modest. And then we can take care of this deprivation that is somewhere there, that is also scaring about the certain aspects that are behind it, about building sites that are horrible in its treatment with the ground floor, to be honest. But you have a great infrastructure, but also that could be better embedded, and I already spoke about your streets. That could be much more, friendly and more, and maybe one direction, yes, to do that. And that transforms this kind of, roads into maybe this is the only pedestrian space that you have in your city. That is much more less than many other cities in Europe. So can we invest a city that transforms into a more balanced environment? And of course, the M8 is a monument of disruption in that way. And what are you going to do with this element? I told you about Rotterdam, and also that was part of our team to learn from it. Why that transformed in a while. What kind of process they had. What kind of elements did they had. Yes, we need teams to work on it. Yes, your museums have to show it. Yes, your art institutions have to be given money and to do something with it. Yes, your tax system with investors need to be so that is not that you don't use them for something way out, but also for something next door, is what that would be much more direct, like we do in Greater Paris at that moment. And then you need visions, you need projects to do, you need discussions with people to go ahead, and you have to upscale it and to make it a market. And that is what Rotterdam has transformed, from that to that, from that to that, from that to that, and from that to that. And yes, that in companies also with this kind of backside of the city that we had, and that has moved, this was for you, yes, it's easy to do. Knock out 2 walls. It doesn't cost a little bit, and then you would transform it into something spectacular. I mean, I need all these people to do that. And then we can talk about, of course, the objectives. That we can share, no? We all want to compete somehow, I guess. Well, who is against that somehow the city centre is for whole Glasgow, if not the half of Scotland? And that you want to celebrate it here, and you want to invest it here, and that you want that by having more liveliness and more function mix, that you want that by, say, making space for both people as for nature and getting rid of some of the cars in that way, that you do that in a remarkable way. Please do it. Do it different than Barcelona or than Amsterdam in that way, and that you want to do that in a kind of way where you also use your nights and your days. So you find ways that I want to live next to a bar that produces music in that way. I think that's an intriguing way of dealing with it, and to test it, to let some people already live over there. And yes, we have to create somehow an urgency. If you are masters in something, then it's by neglecting somehow urgency, by keeping it away. When somehow, maybe I should be more modest, but that gives this sense at this moment that when there's a problem, okay, then avoid it. But that we can't do. If you do that, then nothing will happen in the end, and then Glasgow stays the same in that way. And somehow I do think you have so much energy that we have to direct that into a direction. And then there are projects. Yes, this riverfront should be fantastic. But make a park already next summer. It would be great to make already the underpass with some just things in that way, and get rid for 2 days of the traffic over there. Yes, a lot of people are starting to yell. But that's fine. Just make a traffic jam somewhere. It can be, but a great traffic jam with artists that serve bread and food during your waiting in that way. But I don't know what we can invent to make it possible, and start to think about what kind of buildings should be there. And I come back to that. Make this access to the water. This would be wonderful. 3 barks I could make next year for you in this river. One with, say, blue water, one with red water, and one with salty water. And you would have the best spa in the world in that way, damping, and even when there's rain falling on you, you love it. And you don't have to go to Reykjavik anymore. You can go and stay here on that spot. And then you make extra bridges. You love to swim maybe in the river, and like here in Basel. You are talking about the M8 in that way, and there are many ways of talking with it. Of course, this is the most important part. If you make this kind of, say, where should the national traffic go to? And if that could be directed to the southern part, completely change all that, then I can transform that system into something from this into this. That would be, of course, don't we dream about it? Who is against? Or only some of you that live outside? Maybe it's impossible. Or we can do something like this. We transform it, the guy, like we do. An opening is the 22nd of April in Korea, in Seoul, to transform a highway into a nice park. Your High Line, you say your city center, but where's your skyline in that moment? And then you can inhabit it below, like here in this one, in Switzerland as such. And yes, your high street can be developed in that way, also in a nice way. You can update your mobility in every street to make a much friendlier environment, like this one in Amsterdam, or these bus stations could be more better, or this, say, rail stations could be more opened up and more nicer. This pavement, like in Rotterdam, could be added to it. You can have other kind of parking strategies, maybe river taxis that would be made by some of you that would like to test it. You would like to make remarkable public spaces where you celebrate a little bit, and of course not in your national square, so you do it somewhere else, and you turn it into a glorious Argyle street in that moment. Or in Brumilo, lanes and plazas, is that doable with green streets in that? Is it where you can play in that way? And yes, you should do it maybe in a vibrant way, with buildings that love your city, like maybe like this one that I showed before, or with a repopulated Brumilo, or a kind of Southside developments that answers to it and is invitive, that is like engaging an inclusive aspect. Oh yes, you can build your own house there, your townhouse, and I would love to participate. And yes, you use your housing in the next next by future to mix it, and it will be a law, I would say, to propose and to do that in that way. And then we can also work with the repurposed buildings. We can imagine these rooftops in that way, and we accompany it with a temporary project as such, where we do something on the riverfront. As I said before, the 3 barns, who's against it? When can we do that in the summer to do that? To shut off, to close for one Sunday that motorway would be wonderful to do it. And we have the best park. And I think, my guess is a lot of people will come and to discuss this plan together with us. And yes, your light festival can glow in the dark, and maybe the stairs can come in it. But anyway, this is a kind of list of projects that we should make. Never stop. Just continue producing, put them on a map, and that's what it is. And then we can think about this district in a better way. And then we have to zoom in, of course. And here we try to work now on the examples, what Brumilo can be with this kind of, well, what is this kind of space? And that is now dedicated to business. Wait a minute. Let's also mix it with housing, is what I wanted to say, because that is needed. Because this is the performance of Brumilo at the moment. The 60% offices, and these are the plans, so majority, again, offices. Okay, fair work needs to be done. But I would propose to add that with more housing at the same moment. If you wait too long, then you get a dead district, and you can never repair it at that moment. And then you get a good circle of Brumilo, where indeed this kind of feelings can be admired, where this kind of reusage finally comes into the old places, and it somehow reminds you on this historic development of Brumilo. This was still so fascinating at that moment. It's nostalgia, and I know nostalgia because I'm from Rotterdam in that way. Nostalgia can be fruitful, and that if we use that rhythm maybe of the past to transform it into the next step. So can we imagine a fabric that is maybe more smaller, where I have more neighbors in that way. Not these big monsters. You find 20,000 square meters for a new headquarter building. Very good. Make it vertical. Make the footprint of this building small, because then you have more neighbors to attend yourself, and then you can make these small streets where more things can happen, and that transforms it into such a kind of environment. And then more people have an address on the river, where of course we need to change. These bus lanes. But of course that we have to see, even with them, how we can live with it. How we can, maybe they can drive a little bit slower in that way, so that they can be part of this environment. And then you can dream about this kind of situations. And yes, and that would be great to have this kind of boulevard in the end, where you can be together. And the M8, maybe temporarily we can already transform it. That into spaces like this, like in Zurich in that way, where indeed you can make glass walls under that highway, and you can have your auditorium or your university there. So imagine this part that is now like this, and turn it into these 2 glass blocks with this kind of pavement that goes through. You want to go further, is what it wants to say. It is not complicated to do. Where is that investor that wants to make this restaurant there? Or where is the person that would that is what your city is about in that way. And then we can optimize the pedestrian system in that way. We can do a circulation with one way in the end, so that I don't need all that space for it. And that has miniature parking places incorporated in that building. And that wants to be remarkable in its public space, with sections like this, with plantations like this, with housing like that, with plazas like that, where you want to live on ground floor also, and where you want to walk, and where the park, say maybe on the front, behaves like that, and the plaza in the middle activates like this. And that is maybe what your Brumilo could be. Yes, it needs laws. It needs parcellation, which is mini in that way, which is small, so that this kind of buildings can be erected. We also in the heart can be like that, this, and done so that this kind of mix will come out of it. And then we can start to mix it with urban environments. And maybe then there comes a drawing like that. That we can see that this transforms into this current tabula rasa, where this a chain of connections, where this Argyle Street becomes more green, where the streets on the parallel to the highway can be activated with in-between streets like this, where the urbanized M8 is a piece of discussion and transformation as such, and everything combined as a starting point of it. Where you talk about, of course, what are the existing buildings, that you see this as a potential map of that new area. And you start maybe with a series of gardens. It could be a beautiful park temporary. Why don't we do that? Why do we wait in that way? It could be 20 species could be there, and I would have this kind of view from the highway as such. Yeah, you could say, I want to have towers. Some of you would like to do. I say, wow, not do it in that way, because this is kind of horrendous in that way. But maybe we can inhabit the park also with temporary structure. I was dreaming to have say 7 developers gathered and they ever make one tower, and one is it makes a G tower, the other the L tower, an A tower, etc. Would be super cool to do that, and so that we suddenly have an address over the planet, and I land somewhere on a plate, and wow, and I see it from there that glows in the dark. But you can also make a castle, if you like. If you don't have a castle and it's in Edinburgh, then why don't we make it? You make the garden surrounded with buildings that have it there, and you have this beauty also on that spot. So you also can make a neighborhood with combining different heights, a lower one, here you see different tests on it, even very lower one. Make a restoration of the history. In a certain moment in our discussions, if we turn everything in glass, like Chanel, then you would have the perfect city of the past, but then glorified in this kind of Fata Morgana in that way. And that looks like this. Of course, you can allow certain kind of, say, towers or highlights in it, and it becomes quite cute in that way. It becomes very human and very diversified. And that would mean that then Brumilo from this say, purple zone turns into this. That would be hope, that would be encourage you. But I warn you, there are dangers there. This is the current, say, situation where proposed developments are taking place. And if I could combine that with this kind of desire of humanity in that way, then there's a conflict. It's up to you. We start from this. We want to work it further. It is not my city center. It's ours, and it's yours. And I hope this, in all these elements that I try to explain from XS to XL, that somehow comes together in your city center, is what I want to celebrate tonight as an invitation for the next phases to talk further. Hopefully you send me many postcards to coming down, many emails to get more ideas so that we can talk about that, and that you feel somehow that it becomes more of you than of us. And with that, I hope both the theoretical, both for the ones that are more interested in architecture and others that are more in planning, to span the gap between bottom-up and top-down, from XS to XL, from XL to XS. I started from ego to we go, so let's go with this plan. Thank you very much for your attention.